Hey everyone, welcome to the Higher Points podcast. I'm Nick Sauer, sitting here in the studio with my buddy, at least for the time being, Nate Hyatt.
For the next 20 minutes.
We're going to talk about a subject today that he and I don't really see eye to eye on. And so we're probably going to end up fighting at the end of the podcast. So if you just hear like a big commotion, you can just shut the podcast off because we've just gone to blows.
Someone walked out.
or you might walk out.
Shots fired. Well,
most of the time, you and I are on like the same page on most things. Not everything, but this one, I don't think we're like on the same page pretty much at all.
Nope. I'm completely.
Here we
left.
go.
I'm super liberal on this one, I guess.
Okay, so I think we have to give the backstory because the whole thing is we're going to talk about the Andrew Tate.
See,
guy.
I don't even like talking about this guy because it just gives him more freaking clout.
So, well, you should have said that before we wanted to decide what we're going to do the podcast.
But I want to talk about him because I think he's a piece of shit.
Okay, so anyway, we want to talk about the Andrew Tate. And so if you don't know who Andrew Tate is, essentially he is a guy that kind of has like just a podcast and a platform. And
he was a kickboxer, pretty successful kickboxer before. And so he had money from that. Like he was a championship kickboxer, him and his brother. Andrew Tate, and what's his brother's name?
I have no idea.
I think they're twins, honestly.
Oh, okay.
And they're both like together all the time. I think his brother's the one that does a lot of the filming and stuff. Well, this guy, he got banned on all social media. But then he started going off on everybody's podcast, and now you see him on TikTok and Reels and Facebook and YouTube.
Well, and he's even been on some news shows too that I've seen.
Yeah.
Like you just see clips, and it's like, whoa, he's like on some sort of a newscast, like on TV.
He's the top G. That's what he calls himself.
Top G. Well, so and some of the things he says are, pretty controversial, especially under today's worldviews and the today of like how men are kind of expected to be and expected to act. And so,
feminists do not like this guy one bit.
Yeah, right. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it is like some of the things he says, like they really resonate. They really make sense to me in the sense of like, there was this one lady that he had on the podcast that was saying, essentially like, women just don't want men anymore. Like, we just don't want men. We don't want a physical relationship. We don't need them. We don't anything. And he was like, well, no, that's crap. He goes, because that is as a result of you living your relatively comfortable life. Mm-hmm. The point with which, like, your tire goes flat, like, who do you call to come change that tire?
Shit hits the fan.
Yeah, when a hurricane happens, like most of the time, and this is not me saying that women can't do any of these things. Women aren't present in emergency response or tow truck drivers or anything like that. But I mean, statistically, the vast majority is like, if you call that, you're expecting a man to show up and do those things, like framing a house. Like on hood construction, how many women are part of the like framing houses and construction crew?
Negative.
Yeah, so. It would stand to reason that the men are the one framing the houses. Again, not saying women can't. Not at all what I'm saying.
No, they are out there, but it's just few and far between.
Yeah. And so to say that, like, we don't want men, we don't need men, etc., like, he was kind of pushing back against that. Like, the person that designed your car was likely a man. Like, the one you're driving. When something breaks down and you need the oil changed or need it fixed, usually it's a dude that's doing it. So to say you don't need him, you don't want him, etc., he was pushing back against that, saying like that's BS. And of course, he uses significantly more colorful language than I just did to illustrate my point.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that side of it. Biblically speaking, men and women like need to be together. Like that's the way it works. The man runs the house, or the man is the breadwinner, basically, and the woman runs the house. And he is fighting for that, I would say. But I don't think that I think he says that, but I don't really think he believes in it. Because he's also said multiple times about how women should be the property of man, and that men can do whatever they want to women and not have any repercussions, basically. Which is the part of it that I disagree with. Women need to be treated just and fair and all this, and another one of the controversial things is he was kicked off of Big Brother in 2016 for, they say it was his tweets, but there's videos out there of him beating a woman with a belt at this deal. And, like, she's got the welts to prove it and everything. And I think that my personal opinion of him is, like, he's a womanizer, and he has money and a platform, and he's doing it all for the likes and to grow his brand, which is his, what's the name of the school?
I have no idea on that either.
It's something off the top, like Top G University or...
See, for a guy that doesn't want to give him publicity, you're sure giving him a lot of free right now. But, you know, and that's just another thing too, is like when you talk about the biblical side of things, you know, there is scripture saying, and you've heard me say it in
Hustlers University.
Yeah. You'll even hear Andy talk about hustling.
Well, yeah.
And so, but not in the context of like,
Andrew Tate's money came from basically him exploiting women on webcam services.
But again, if they're being paid a fair day's wage for a day's work, how is that exploitation of women? I don't get that.
There's reasoning to believe that it's not, because he was arrested for sex trafficking. That's
and
like they're being held against his will.
And Kyle Rittenhouse was arrested for murder.
Also, Kyle Rittenhouse is a U.S. citizen and lives in the United States. Andrew Tate used to be a U.S. citizen, is no longer a U.S. citizen, and will not come into the United States because he would be fucking put in prison right away.
Well, yeah, because just like anybody and everybody that makes waves in the current establishment, they want to get rid of them. Like the people at the top that they don't want us to be successful. They don't want us to be men. They don't want us to be masculine. They want us to be worthless, fat, and not do anything that goes against what the common conceptions of the day are. So yeah, I mean there was a lot of pressure from the United States.
You're going to tell your daughter it's okay to work this job for this guy.
So I'm going to tell my daughter that she needs to when she's 18, there's nothing I can do to tell her what she can and can't do when it comes to making money.
Another issue, like, so basically he's pushing porn out, you know? And what is one thing that our society has an issue with?
Yeah.
Men in our society is porn.
Right.
So I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't believe you should be making money. That is unethical, in my opinion.
Well, I can't say I necessarily disagree with you on that point.
And
it's the definition of human trafficking is when you exploit someone sexually and make them have sex for money, but then they don't receive any of that money, any of that pay, or they receive peanuts, or you're withholding like food, you're withholding like contact with family, etc., etc., etc. Now, if that's the case and that's what happened with him, and I don't have enough information to make that, you know, that call, like that understanding, then yeah, I mean, he should be prosecuted for sex, you know, for human trafficking. But again, if these women came on here, they're literally doing something that is lawful and legal. Whether we agree with porn or not, from the ethical standpoint, pornography is lawful and legal as long as everybody's over the age of 18 and consenting. So now, if these women are getting paid a day's wage for a day's work, that's not human trafficking. That's just somebody going to a job that doing something that maybe we don't necessarily agree with or like.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that, but there's a reason he doesn't do it in the United States.
Well, and I think that also...
Because he'd be done already.
I think that also, you know, people don't want to see... I don't think people like to see truly, like, amazingly successful men that are helping lift up other men and all that other kind of stuff, too.
So you feel like he's a truly amazing man?
So no. I'm saying that anyone that speaks out against anything that doesn't make everybody feel cuddly, comfy 100% of the time gets hated on. I mean, Andy does, Jocko does, all those people, they all get hated on by people. They all have haters.
I mean, it doesn't matter which side you are on.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have haters.
And so, you know, the thing that I have to agree with that Mr. Tate said in one of his videos was, for like all of human history, it's been like, essentially the men, they go out, they provide, they build, they do all this other kind of stuff. And then, women do what they do, whatever. And each society was a little different on what the expectations of women were. But now just in recent times, we've completely flipped that. And so it's worked for millennia and it's done a good job for millennia. But now suddenly we just want to flip it and change it and expect things to just be the way they are or better than the way they were. I mean, we've created like societies and overcome like diseases and all this other kind of stuff. And that work has been done by both sexes. And, my thing about the whole like quote unquote pay gap and all this other kind of stuff, the thing that I don't understand is if companies could pay women less money, right? Because there's this pay gap, then why don't companies employ solely just women?
More women.
From a business standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. If I can literally get away with paying a woman less money because there's the quote unquote pay gap, then I would employ nothing but women and kick all the men out because then I put more money in my pocket.
It's more for your bottom line.
So, that doesn't necessarily carry weight with me. And just flipping everything around doesn't make sense.
Like you say that Andrew Tate is like, I feel like he's just talking because that man has built nothing, in my opinion. He was a kickboxer, got money there. He's made money off of this, whatever it could be, scandal. I mean, there's like part of the arrest that happened was like he's tied into organized crime and stuff over there and this and that. And you know how that goes. Those guys don't go to jail.
Yeah.
Well, they do, but they get right back out. And it's hard to put those guys behind bars forever because of the money they have and the ties they have, whether that be like cops on payroll or whatnot.
Look at it from the flip side of the coin, though, too. If he is in a country that has organized crime and the organized crime finds out they have money, they're going to extort him. So he basically could be forced into being in organized crime because he's essentially paying protection money because they know he's got money. So they're going to start, I'm going to take I'm going to kill your wife or your kid or whatever unless you pay me this protection money. And then organized crime weasels its way in. It's the same way as Al Capone did during Prohibition days to all of those shopkeepers.
What I was getting at is like this guy can't even hold like Andy's jockstrap because Andy is providing jobs for thousands of people and building things, helping millions of people with his products. Jocko is the same way. Goggins, they're all the same way. Like they're motivating people, helping people, and they're walking the walk and talking the talk. All this dude is just sits and does podcasts all day and boozes and like, you guys want to have this lifestyle? Like, okay, be like me, basically.
Well, that part I will concede and agree with you on. Like when you talk about Andy and them, like he is talking the talk and walking the walk. Mm-hmm. I have to admit that. But when it comes again to just some of the points that are being made, like I agree with that. I agree with Andrew Tate on some of the points that he makes. I don't agree with everything, but just like you and I have talked on the podcast many times, I don't always agree with every single thing Jocko, Andy, et cetera, say. So, and my thing is like, and I told you this in a text message when you and I were kind of first discussing this is, I know that I as a man have made mistakes in the past and I have done my best to change and I've done my best to be a better man and walk the walk like you were talking about. And I certainly wouldn't want to be judged solely on my past mistakes because I think that's like, for instance, I think that's what people look for in like our politics, right? They look like they voted for Trump because he was going to be the next savior, right? Mm-hmm. Like he was going to make America great again. And like, like one of the things that he like allowed to happen that I didn't necessarily agree with was like allowing the ATF to ban bump stocks and stuff like that. Like that's actually technically really anti-Second Amendment, yet he let it happen, right? So I think everybody looks to people in their lives or people that are in positions of power or people that are, in places where they have are subjects of influence mm-hmm. and they expect perfection. That doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. I mean, you hear Andy talk about the skeletons in his closet on his podcast. Jocko talks about some of his like misgivings and his like, he had some fratricide, which is basically like kind of blue on blue or U.S. Army or U.S. military soldiers shooting U.S. military soldiers in the fog of war that he owned in his book. And like where some of his leadership wasn't quite up to par and people got hurt or killed as a result of that. And like, people don't judge Jocko based on that, you know? And so,
well, it gives him a better reputation because, oh, this guy's fucking human.
Yeah.
You know?
And so I think that's another thing too with the Andrew Tate guy is that everybody sees him and what he's saying and then like demands that he's like just this perfect human being.
That's what he puts himself out there as, though.
Yeah. And
it's like even his actions of beating women are okay because there's property.
Yeah. Well, but then that also happened how long ago? Has he changed since then?
He hasn't said anything about that. Has he apologized about it? Has he said, like,
that
hey, this isn't okay? Like, I haven't seen... That would be all over social media, just like all the rest of his bullshit is. In my opinion.
I don't know. I don't know, because I think that you sell more ad space and you get more views, clicks, and likes over the controversial stuff versus somebody owning something and then moving on. So I don't know if that would get the same shares.
I don't know. I mean, like, in my opinion, that's kind of like a transformation. Like, when people post their gym pictures and like, oh, lost 80 pounds, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like it's got a lot of the same, like, you're going to get more likes on that than you are just your regular everyday progress stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because everybody likes seeing, you know, the outcome.
It's like,
not really the process, but the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, this isn't me, like, falling on the sword saying this guy's infallible and he's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. But just because of what's happened with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Kyle Rittenhouse and the officer in the George Floyd incident, I'm trying to remember his name. Essentially, he was like kind of crucified. Whereas, like, if you actually look at the other view, like he didn't have his knee on the guy's neck. He ended up actually dying of a fentanyl overdose, you know, stuff like that. And so,
I thought
the way those things have happened, the way those things have happened have made me cautiously pessimistic, or cautiously, cautiously, what's the word I'm looking for? Where I just don't necessarily believe it, like at face value. Like I'm just cautious of what's being put in front of my face, because I know that ultimately, you know, the news media outlets, and the stuff that's coming out with Twitter, with that Elon Musk is releasing about how our government literally hindered people's free speech and influenced an election. You know, all that stuff makes me...
That stuff has been out for years, though. There's documentaries on it on
Right, but now they actually have the full-on proof. Like, here's the internal emails, it was speculation before, yes. But now Elon's releasing here are the emails from everyone.
There was one that, it was over the Facebook election and the statistics and stuff on that. Where Facebook did it for the Trump election.
Right. And then also Zuckerberg admitted to it on Joe Rogan's podcast. Mm-hmm. So that's why when this stuff gets put in front of my face, I don't just automatically jump on a bandwagon.
It's all there for a reason. It's because it's what you like.
Yeah. And so
it's an algorithm.
That's why, you know, when you first sent that to me, it was like, see, I was like, okay, like an arrest is a lot different than a conviction.
Well, I mean, he's been investigated over this since April. So it wasn't like just a quick overnight arrest deal.
Yeah.
And the way he got caught just killed me.
The pizza box thing?
Well, it started with Twitter, because Elon Musk gave him his Twitter back because he had been banned. And he just starts beef with, what's her name?
Greta. Like Greta Thunberg, however you say her name. The climate change girl.
The yelling and screaming teenager that broke the internet for a little while.
Yeah.
He just started beef with her out of nowhere, just tweets at her. And she responded back and said, send your response here to smalldickenergy at talktoyoulater.com or something like that. And it, like, to me, it got under his skin so much. Like, the next thing, like, he set up this whole staged deal and, like, a whole staged video, 2-minute video of a response trying to roast her. And in this video, he's like, I want some pizza or something like that. And one of the dudes off camera hands him pizza. And these pizza boxes have the name of the pizza place on it in Romania. And they're like, oh, the cops saw that.
He's in country. Yeah, he's in country.
He's here, so we can go get him.
Yeah.
And they arrested him on that. And in that video, he says something about not recycling the pizza boxes.
No, she did. She roasted him, saying, "This is what happens when you don't recycle your pizza box."
No, in the video, he says, "And we're not going to recycle these pizza boxes." That's where that came from. Because then she responded afterwards.
This is what
after
happens.
he got arrested. She's like, "This is what happens when you don't recycle pizza boxes." She just roasted him.
You know, that would be part. I mean, because I can't tell you how many times, like, to give an example of something similar that happened to me like that. When I worked in the jail in Rice County, I was doing outside checks. Well, the inmates would take, like, they weren't allowed to have, like, regular pens, like that pen right there. They aren't allowed to have that because it could be a weapon. So they had what they called flex pens, that they were literally flexible pens. Well, they would take those pens and they would pull the caulking around the windows out, and then they would hide the pen back behind where that gap that the caulking would fill. Well, as I'm doing outside checks, I look up and I see a pen in a window. And I'm like, seriously? So I go inside, confiscate the pen, walk out into the day room, and I hold this pen up. I'm all triumphant, right? I found this, and of course, keep in mind, I'm probably like 18, 19, 20 at this time. A fucking moron still. And I hold the pen up and I'm like, seriously, guys, I'm not as stupid as I look, right? Like, I found this kind of thing. Well, come to find out, they did a shakedown the next day. Right next to where I'd put my boot to grab said pen was a huge bag of hooch that they were making alcohol that I missed. So, you know what I did? I went back into that pod and said, "Hey guys, guess what? Evidently I am as stupid as I look." And they just cracked up laughing. And of course I won a lot of respect out of that as a result. But I've found more times that when you're a cocky bastard, it usually blows up in your face.
It does.
And I have to admit, as much as I don't necessarily agree with Greta and the way she does things, that was funny.
It killed me. I don't like Greta either.
That was funny.
Necessarily agree with all of that. We do have a climate crisis and stuff. There is an issue there.
Well, I think it's interesting. It went from global warming to climate change.
Yeah. And it's...
The wording is very important.
It is. 100%. I just don't agree with the way Greta wants to do things versus the right. You know, like I say, and we can meet in the middle and find a good way. You know, nuclear power is very viable.
Yeah.
It's the cleanest energy we got.
And it'll run for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And
whereas
we have a bunch of them in America.
Wind and all that stuff.
Well, the problem with solar is it takes up incredible amounts of acreage where you're getting rid of like native grasses and stuff that can actually pull the carbon and things out of the air.
What does it take to make them? Is it silica or there's some sort of,
it's
something that,
it's the same thing with like the electric cars and all that other kind
lithium.
of stuff is you damage the environment significantly more to make said clean energy than you actually like help or improve the environment.
Yeah. And you got armies of kids with hammers and chisels mining lithium.
Well, and have you ever seen also like when replacing the blades and stuff on the wind turbines and stuff, like there's no way to recycle any of that, so they literally just go to like a boneyard and live in perpetuity because they're not biodegradable or anything like that. They just sit there and they're just worthless now.
There's better ways out there.
Yeah, and so like I think you know, nuclear is definitely like the best way to do it. And of course I know nothing about, like, I'm not an expert on any of that kind of stuff. And everybody seems to think they get a bad rap thinking of Chernobyl. But I'm like, we have tons of nuclear reactors in America. Tons.
I saw something kind of cool on Facebook the other day, and it was basically produced energy from your suspension of your vehicles. And so it connected to your suspension you already had, and as you would go down the road and hit bumps, it would flex, and it would spin basically like a turbine on the inside and produce energy. And then, like, truckers are using them to charge batteries and then run, like, their day cabs at night. Instead of a generator or leaving their truck on, they're using that to charge their day cab and run their microwave and TV and stuff while they sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, I've seen they've even that technology, some of that, they called it the KRS, I think, in Formula One racing, where when you accelerated, or actually when you braked, like that braking action would rotate a motor that then charged like a little battery engine, and you could actually push the button on that KRS to give you just a little bit extra boost on. And so that technology's been out there, and I mean, even Tesla's use it. I think Tesla's use regenerative braking as well.
It's the same as braking. It's just with your suspension instead.
Can you believe that we went from Andrew Tate to climate change to like regenerative braking on electric vehicles and stuff?
We start talking about regenerative farming.
Well, speaking of that, another thing that I think is interesting is the idea of technology, like just technology for the sake of technology. Like we coming up with an electric car just because we think it's better for the environment and everything, and
or
like,
a tractor that drives itself.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait a minute, like tech just for the sake of tech. Like, do you know how many AI platforms are out there where it will like literally write articles for you, or write papers for you, or write Facebook posts for you? Like, you're taking away the whole idea of human creativity and this, and doing technology for the sake of technology is a fucking dangerous proposition.
Yeah. I mean, just...
We have to really think about it and why we're doing it.
Which is cool to me, like the way Andy does things and why he employs so many people, because he does not, like, he gets to a certain point of technology and he stops. Like, his warehouse is not automated. You know, people go hand pick stuff off the shelves. They put it in a box, they write you a note, and they ship it out, like by hand. And so he's producing jobs that way. If you get too much technology, eventually, like, we're going to run out of stuff. Like, what the fuck's everybody going to do? Then you have to rely on the government.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, and have you ever noticed how, like, Bill Gates and those other guys they're buying up all kinds of farmland and all that other kind of stuff? So now, essentially, you buy up all this farmland, and now you have tractors that run everything and all this other kind of stuff. So now we don't have a need for a farmer. We don't have a need for the person that produces, but now certain people are in charge of the production of food.
And
et
well,
cetera,
farms are the same way. I feel like you're getting to a certain point where there's too much technology in farming, and the operating costs are so fucking high already for farmers. And then when their John Deere tractor breaks down, they can't fix it themselves. They got to call a technician to come out and rewrite the code on the whole goddamn tractor.
Well, that's the whole. You see the same
and
thing
actually,
in cars.
John Deere got in trouble, and they had to back off on that, and to where they had to pull the computers down to where farmers can work on them a little bit. Like, they got in trouble for having basically a monopoly on it, to where they were the only ones that could work on it. And, which is good. That needs to happen. Government needs to step up and regulate that so that there isn't that much technology, so that farmers can do their job and do it themselves.
Same thing with cars these days. Like, you try to work on a car and it's impossible to get to.
Or like the emission stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like how many, don't even get me started on that.
Well, we're already at like 30-some minutes, so we should probably wind it up anyway.
I guess it is to the point. So.
Well, I guess at least on the upside, we didn't fight.
No.
And you didn't attack me at my Christian values, man, because I had so much shit I was going to say back to you on that. I had a whole thing planned for that, and you didn't even attack me at my Christian values.
See, I just wanted to get you thinking real hard.
I had a lot I was going to say back to you. I had it all planned out and ready to go. I was looking for the opportunity to get in there and say it, but you didn't even open the door so I could come busting through like the Kool-Aid man.
He was going to make me feel real small.
No, that was not the intent. The intent was to illustrate my point. That was the intent. So, take it away.
Well, guys, thanks for listening to the Higher Points in this To The Point episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you don't listen to Andrew Tate. And
listen to parts of Andrew Tate.
Yeah, pick and choose what sounds good.
There's some good stuff in there.
Ish.
All right, we're getting right into fight now, motherfucker.
Don't forget, we are gonna rent out the podcast studio, and if you guys need a hand getting started, just reach out to us on the website or on our social medias. Give us a like and a share and a review, and those really go a long ways to help other people see it and hear our message. So we appreciate you guys listening to us, and hope you have a good week.
Hey, thanks for listening. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram at The Higher Points, on Facebook at The Higher Points Podcast. Our website's www.thehigherpoints.com, and you can click the contact page to hit us up about using the podcast studio. And one last thing. Happy birthday, sir.
To me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
27 years old. 27 trips around the sun, baby.
You're almost there.
Yep.
You're almost a man.
Almost there.
So, yeah, we're recording this on Sunday, the 1st, and it'll be released tomorrow. So, I'm proud of you.
Made it.
You made it one more year. We didn't even think you'd be able to do it this long.
Nope.
So, anyway, this is my present to Nate was my presence with him this evening doing a podcast. So, you're welcome.
We didn't even fight, so.
Everybody was like waiting for that to happen. Like, oh, come on. So, all right. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch up with you next time.
Bye, guys.